Cool. I'll do a bit of an official intro then. Well, welcome everybody. There's a few more than last time, which is also cool to see. If you weren't here the last time, this is Knowledge Share. This is our little corner where we invite industry experts from throughout the industry, and then we ask them questions. That's the whole gist of it. Today with us we have Clara. Clara, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure, yeah. My name is Clara Sia. I hail from Vancouver, Canada, currently and probably long term because I do love it here. Was originally born in Malaysia. I am in the midst of learning a few languages for funsies. I played piano in a very traumatic way through the Royal Conservatory, and now I'm learning drums. And as it comes to games, I joined an agency in 2016 when I was still working in government. That was my start in games. I was headhunted at a PAX to do influencer marketing during a time where I didn't know that it could be a full-time job. I didn't even know it was called that. And I was essentially doing it pro bono for indie devs I met at PAX year to year because it seemed like they needed help. And I was a content creator back then. And I had a large network, and I discovered what indie games were for the first time. And I thought, do people know about these things? They're pretty cool. And so I was at the agency. I managed portfolios and campaigns for influence marketing strictly for studios of all sizes, campaigns from zero to very large numbers. And one of my favorite clients at the time that I was on retainer for at the agency was Devolver Digital, and after I managed, they were one of my clients for a couple of years. It was sometime after I managed their Fall Guys launch that they hired me in house, and I was with them for 4 years up until the end of last year. And this year, I'm trying something new. I'm freelancing and working for myself and doing consulting for marketing and biz dev. During my last couple of years at Devolver, I transitioned over to biz dev. I managed thousands of pitches that we got and did the intake for that, early dev relations, all the way up to signing games. And so I have hats in a lot of different places. I also help set up the community team, concepted, scouted, hired, and kicked off the team there that has grown to what it is today. And some of the projects I got to manage were Inscription, Loop Hero, Call to the Lamb. Since being in-house, hired 2 more junior influencer strategists before I left. And I think one of the questions was how to get in, and I fielded over 1,400 applicants between both rounds. So I can probably help to answer a little bit of that definitely later on.
Yeah.
I'm very in love with
you
games.
can do it now if you want. If you want to talk about it as well. I mean, just for the rest of the people that are watching us, we selected a few questions from you. We got quite a few this time around, which was amazing. And as you said, one of them is and one of them was, what would you suggest to someone wanting to get started as an influencer manager in 2025? So if you want to talk a bit about that, go ahead.
Yeah, sure. I mean, everything that I would normally say that you'd expect as a content, if you're a content creator, let's say, everything you'd expect a dev to do in order to build relationships with you, you should be doing in reverse with a developer, right? I would recommend getting some content creation experience yourself. I'm not saying every good influencer marketer or relationships manager, there are a lot of different names these days for the role, needs to do content, but to me it really helps. It's a really big plus if you want to get into it in 2025. This isn't 10 years ago anymore, where you don't really need much and everyone it's the wild west. It is still the wild west, the field, but in order to stand out from the crowd, I just posted on LinkedIn that I'm hiring at the time, and getting the first round was 800 and something applications in less than a month. You need to stand out from the crowd now. People see influencer marketing and social media manager and community marketer as entry positions into the game industry, right or wrong. There are definitely junior positions, so I hired juniors because I wanted to train them up into becoming full-fledged. And I wanted to give them a chance, and I do blind reviews and ethical and all that stuff. I was a hiring manager, so I have certain practices that I like to adhere to. But if you want to stand out from the crowd, one of the biggest ways that you can do it, it gives you automatic points just inherently, is to be a content creator yourself. You don't have to be an influencer. There is a difference. You don't have to reach those sorts of heights, but to understand what it is that they go through, the processes, what their needs are, how they need to interact with audiences, because that's essentially who you're targeting, their audiences, not necessarily them, is a really big feather in your cap. You need to grow your network within the influencer field now. It takes a lot of time to cultivate and maintain those relationships. And without those relationships, you're not an influencer marketer, unfortunately. It's one of your biggest assets, because you're taking away a full-time job of, you're taking away that position from a dev team that doesn't have time to do it themselves. If you're starting, you're not really an asset at all yet in this particular field. I would say do not neglect YouTube. For the vast majority of applicants that I got that had influencer or content creator background or did their research were all Twitch heavy, because Twitch is, for whatever, it's just more accessible as a platform to get onto. But still, by and large, VODs, videos on demand, pre-recorded, edited, YouTube is still the more valuable platform for long-term game coverage, because it's evergreen, and so you need a lot of experience in that as well. Can't just be Twitch. Everything that you expect for how a dev reaches out to you, get familiar with, because you're going to need to be able to do the same thing, and be a part of the community, engage on their social media, be in playtest sessions with devs, make content of their games. If that's, your goal, let's say it's a publisher, right? Just do a lot of content of their games, and post about it a lot. They like to hire within their communities as well. Influencer marketing isn't a field where you have to go to school to succeed in. You can go to school for anything, just marketing in general, right? Or business, or I think I'm sure now there are courses because it's 2025, but I find a lot of, at least in North America, education systems can be a scam. So you don't need to go to school to succeed in it, but you are still likely going to need to invest in yourself, in your learning. So where you're saving your dollars and not paying, 5 to 6 figures for a degree in it, you still probably today in current times, to stand out, need to invest in yourself and put in some time for maybe some very small studios or some nonprofits trying to break into influencers to build up experience and relationships, get good at the work, get good at the flows, develop your own workflows and a portfolio, a body of work for yourself to show potential employers down the line, and learn how to write an effective resume, a cover letter, and how to be an effective interviewee. And I'll say it again: network. It's a 4-letter word. I'm sure still these days, you can call it relationship building, forming connections, whatever you want. But if you don't have those relationships, you cannot be an effective influencer marketer.
Yeah. I feel like you already kind of answered another one of the questions that we got, which was how do existing relationships come into play when you're working with content creators? But you did touch on something that I wanted to spend a bit more time on. You said you need to be a content creator, you don't need to be an influencer. And one of the questions that that we got was, how would you go about picking the right influencers, and how worthwhile is it to reach out to really small influencers? Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Sure. I guess I should clarify the content creator and influencer thing too, just because you did bring it out, and I don't want to leave any of those kinds of questions. A content creator is anybody who turns on a channel or a microphone and makes content. Anyone's a content creator as long as they make content. An influencer it's in the name, is a content creator with influence. So they actually have the ability to sell your game and to push them towards call to actions, CTAs. And they have influence, positive, hopefully influence. There's negative influence too, but by and large, you want to work with positive influencers. There are definitely uses for the negative ones as well. I'm not going to completely shut them off, but I mean, to an extent, I'm not going to work with Nazis, but they do have their uses as well. How to pick the right influencers? Okay. It's not really that hard today to discover influencers. It's just really time consuming if you're just starting. For YouTube, built-in search is actually pretty good. You know, they're owned by the world's largest search engine company, Google, so they got their SEO down. It's not perfect, but it's good enough for anyone to jump into. And I tested out dozens of applications and tools to do discoverability on YouTube. And it honestly, I just always went back to the YouTube search by default because it was really slow. YouTube has certain limits in how many times you can ping their stuff and all that. So YouTube is fairly easy. Twitch, you also have free tools like Solynome and Twitch Tracker. I think Impress maybe has stuff too. I don't want to take away your shine. But yeah, I'm gonna get that demo.
That's fine. We are working on stuff for influencer discovery as well. We can talk about it another time though.
TikTok's a bit more of a challenge, and it's less important currently, but you have that in mind because in a couple of years it'll probably be maybe even less than that. It'll probably be more and more important unless it goes away to Vine. But and it's right now because of how many issues they're dealing with as a platform, it's not as worth it to put your time if you got limited time. And then the rest don't really matter right now, except in China and Korea, who have very specific platforms because you can't watch Twitch and they have their own YouTube, etc. And that's if you're thinking globally, which I hope you are. But for the most part, the rest of the world, those are your top three: is YouTube, Twitch, TikTok. Facebook, it doesn't really matter right now. They have numbers, but the wrong demographics. Instagram, wrong demographics typically. But again, if you have someone full time, yes, they can focus on all the platforms. But if you have limited time, those are your top three. Paid options like StreamForge, StreamHatchet, Rainmaker, they can also help make the process easier. And they can search cross-platform for you. Other features, they also have the campaign management if you want key distribution. Sometimes though they have to come with them, and so that's why they cost so much. They don't really want you to use just their platform. They want you to use their campaign services, so know what you want. But if you want to save money and do discoverability on your own, you'll need to know what to search for, right? So how to search for the right influencers, I think, was a question. Oftentimes the best answer is the simplest answer: just search for similar games to yours. The most obvious way is to search for similar genres. But you also want to tier your list of influencers. So you don't just want like one big list. You want to tier them, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, etc. for the different waves that you want to send your keys out to, do different outreach waves. Maybe prioritize who gets money if you have a sponsorship budget or previews, or send out physical merch kits. You want to like prioritize them and tier them off. And to do that, you just get more granular. So for instance, you have a turn-based isometric strategy game that's about space pirates. I've seen so many pitches on space pirates. You've got your general tier of strategy game influencers, obviously, and variety creators. They play everything. And then you've got higher tiers of compatibility with influencers who are maybe specifically into turn-based strategy games, or specifically into sci-fi strategy games or 3D strategy games. And then look for other intersections in the Venn diagram too that don't necessarily like not in the middle. So maybe they're creators who are into turn-based games and really like pirates, or they cosplay as pirates on their streams. Get them on your list too. So do a pass of just throwing names onto a tiered list with notes on why they fit your game. Just throw them all on there. Don't think too hard. And then as you get closer and closer, do a second pass and dig into who they actually are. So check their social media, check their content. They're the content themselves. Get really into it. What do they make in general? Is it just long Let's Plays? Or do they also do lore deep dives? Do they do cosplay? Do they do competitions? Do they do tips and tricks guides? Things like that. Check out how active their chats are. You do run the risk sometimes of certain channels in certain regions. They're very prevalent of botting, is what's called. They use view bots, so they're not really real. Mm-hmm. Check their comment sections. Are they real? And look into their discords if you're considering, and these are for people you're considering in your top tier. You're maybe going to ship them something. You might spend money on them or whatnot. Or like you really want to get to know them because you don't want them representing your game if they shouldn't. So peek into their discords, that's at the highest level of snooping, and see how it is that they interact with their communities, and then weed out the ones that raise any red flags, creators who directly conflict with your team's or your game's values, or are otherwise just bad fits to represent your project that you've poured your heart and soul into. So you want it represented well, and then highlight the stars for special opportunities, like I mentioned before. And what was the second question? The small influencers, small creators?
Yeah, how worthwhile they are, essentially.
It is worthwhile to reach out to small creators for sure. How much of it is dependent on your bandwidth, of course. As one recommendation, I'd start with, if you're doing outreach for the first time, use smaller creators as your first round to figure out what part of your pitch gets the best response, what parts don't get any response, and they're responding saying, "Oh my god, I love space pirates." Like, okay, wow, I'm getting lots of people who love. I'm gonna play that part up. Those are the top assets I'm gonna put on them. The top GIF or GIF, depending on who you are, it's gonna feature very prominently, like, this is how space piratey my game is. Or people, maybe they respond with, "I don't really like turn-based games," or something. Like, downplay the things that don't get the best response. If you get no response at all, you need to tweak the whole thing. And then you just tweak your strategy, encompass all your learnings, and then continually hit bigger and bigger creators as you gain more confidence in your pitch with them. Small creators cannot sustain a launch campaign on their own. You do need the eyeballs of bigger influencers that their audiences get on your game to really have a successful campaign, like 99% of the time. You don't need all of them, but you need a couple of fairly big ones. It doesn't mean small influencers don't add value. Of course, their communities are generally more dedicated, more attentive. They're there for their creators, and they'll usually cover your game for free, or with a game key. And out of personal interest, they're very impassioned, and they might want to be involved in other ways, like joining your Discord or bringing their community in, or helping you play test, beta test, give you feedback for a credit in your game or something like that. They might even want to do some voice work for you. Be very careful with that. Sometimes bigger creators also discover games from smaller creators, especially if you've got like quite a community talking about it. It's like kind of like a low simmering buzz always on, sort of like how PR works. And if you can get them in volume, a lot of small creators, big creators do pay attention. Some of them are also friends with smaller creators, and they are influenced by them. And also content from small creators is better than no content at all. Absolutely. You're going to a Twitch category, that's your game's page, and seeing 0 streams live is decidedly worse than seeing 10 to 20 very small creators live with thumbnails at various stages of your game. It's still a very cool feeling. And if you get any creator making stuff on YouTube, that's forever, unless they take it down, which they most likely won't. So you can help promote that. You can maybe even approach them and say, "Hey, can I use your content promote on our channels?" and things like that. So there is definitely value. But because your time is so limited, likely is if it's your first game or you're a small team, you want to definitely, your top priority is generally going to be enticing big influencer attention, but you need the breadth of them to get to that point, and you only have so many hours in the day. So just temper your efforts to get the most bang for your buck, or your ROI as high as possible.
Cool. I was going through a checklist in my mind. I was like, cool, I'm doing the right thing. There's a couple of follow-up questions in the chat from people watching this. If you want to go through them, if there's anything that you want to answer. In the meantime, I saw somebody mentioning IGDA and volunteering, and as somebody that has co-founded one of the local IGDA chapters here in Italy, I would say it is absolutely a great way to get in contact with more developers. And most of the time, at least, I'm not doing that much anymore, but most of the time, you just need to show up. You just show up and you get to meet people, and people will ask you, "Okay, what do you want to get involved with?" And it's a great way for people to get started.
Sorry, you said IGA is an in-person event?
IGDA, the International Game Developers Association.
Yes, IGDA. Yeah, okay. Actually, let me look at. Is there much advantage to giving out full game keys as opposed to linking creators to a public demo? Yes. The worst thing that can happen if you send out a key is it shows up on the gray market. Well, the worst thing is you you send it out to the wrong influencers and they completely trash your game, and that lives on the internet forever. But hopefully, you've done some research that you're not sending it out to just anybody. The second worst thing is that it shows up in the gray market, which is it's not great for a number of reasons, but at the same time, they weren't going to buy your game anyway, so it's not like a loss to you in that sense. But yeah, especially with bigger influencers, they do not want to take steps. You get a lot of you're probably going to get pitched by a lot of platforms like a Keymailer, like a Lurkit, like a Terminals, etc. And they mostly cater to small to mid-tier creators because the bigger ones don't have time to go through and all those extra steps. They're still valuable. They'll still save you time. But if you want to target the big ones, even the mid-tier ones, I'm a teeny tiny. I used to be a content creator back, when I was really active, and I got so many emails every day. I wasn't a big one. Right now, I'm super casual. I stream like a couple nights a week just to like force myself to play new games. My little teeny tiny community. I still get 40 emails a day with game keys. So of course I'm going to go towards the ones that have game. I don't even look at them anymore currently, other than to do research. I just like to buy my own games because then I don't feel as bad if I don't have the most positive feedback for it. But so full game keys, absolutely. If you have a public demo, and that's all you have, and you don't want to give them the full game key, maybe consider doing a preview thing where they get a special branch, give them a special branch. They're all used to doing Steam beta branches now, and they can maybe access it a week before your public demo goes live, and that gives them some exclusivity. But that will mostly be towards YouTubers. Twitch streamers need to have a lot more content because they're all long form. YouTubers can do edited content. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Oh yeah, by the way, Dan is sharing your contacts just in case anybody wants to follow you on Blue Sky. We have a couple more questions that I wanted to go through. We can get back to this if we have a bit of time at the end of the session. But we talked about the size of influencers. We talked about the relationships. I did want to get a bit into how paid sponsorships work, and I know that it's a thing that we could talk about for like 3 hours and not get past the surface of it. So in, I don't know, like 2 minutes, what do you think is the most important thing to know when it comes to paid sponsorships?
Okay. Knowing, because you gave me a little preamble, that these are mostly, it's more introduction into it here. So if it's your first campaign, the most important thing for me in terms of advice is to hire someone. Because it's doubling your work, sometimes tripling your work, even as an experienced influencer manager. There's legal ramifications. You need to have, your legal contracts. There's compliance things involved, depending on the regions around the world. You have global payments potentially with taxes and all that. You have to be even more careful about who you're selecting to be involved. So it's and the worst part of it, I think, for most people, including myself, and why I stopped doing execution, now I'm just doing strategy as a consultant. You'll likely be dealing with talent agents and managers negotiating rates and terms. You need to know what fair rates are for your ROI, and that alone is enough to turn most people off if they don't do it as their full-time jobs. It's not just black and white CPM, unfortunately, or dollars per CCV, concurrent viewer, for live streams. You can try to aim for a $5 or less CPM for YouTube videos. Good luck. Or maybe you think it's a 1-to-1 ratio for every channel. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. The reality is you need to evaluate their entire marketable presence online. So, they don't have a really large Twitch channel, but they're really big on social media, and that's more value that they can bring to the table outside of the video or the stream. Which means more money is usually involved because that is value, right? But it also means you get a good deal, maybe hitting multiple platforms. Maybe they're really, really big on YouTube, but really small on Twitch, but that's where they do some of their content and then they upload it in an edited format to YouTube. Try to get the most bang for your buck in getting cross-platform. If they have talent agencies, they'll charge you extra because they need to collect too. I remember working with some more Hollywood actor agencies like CAA, WME, United. They've been getting into influencers for a while, so you might deal with them. And those are not very fun at all because you'll see 8 people on every email chain with their assistants, and each one of them has to get paid out of this deal, so that number is getting inflated. So and maybe you want specialized content that takes more time or effort, like a tips and tricks guide, like I mentioned before, or highlights only or something that costs more than just playing a game and throwing it up and vomiting onto the internet. So generally speaking, YouTube videos will cost more than Twitch streams, like 1-to-1, minute-to-minute, for several reasons. Obviously with YouTube, they take more risk on YouTube because they have to make the full content and hope that it does well and upload it. Whereas Twitch, they can just do it. It's much easier to get a Twitch stream for your game than it is a YouTube video, typically, because a streamer can just live check chat. Oh, it's not going well. Well, I'm going to stop playing it. I'm going to play something else. Whereas a YouTuber puts all the time. It's front-loaded effort and resources, and hopefully it does well. And they can't do anything about it if it doesn't. So you're most likely paying them, and Twitch, maybe less likely. But the good news is that they are generally worth more to you on YouTube because they are evergreen. Very rare that content creators take it down. It's searchable. It's all SEO built in. And the more good news, if you're paying them, you're now their client. So you get to dictate the deliverables and the timeline. You don't want to be too overbearing, of course. They're the creatives in this particular. You're creatives too, as devs. But when it comes to content, they're the creative, so don't be too overbearing there. But you can ask for extra things now because you're their client. You can ask for tracked links to your store page and all of their descriptions. You can ask for to hit certain key selling points in their content, try to make it natural. You can ask for a certain number of social posts and certain production elements, like using customized alerts to your game, turning off their natural alerts. You can license the use of their name and their content that you sponsored to promote your game, like cut it up and put it in your trailers or your Steam page or things like that. You can also ask them to, if you have a multiplayer game, you must play this co-op, so you're the client now. You can take all of those kind of parameters.
Cool. I guess that answers the question. There was one last one that we wanted to go through. We talked about how to do things. What should you absolutely not do when you're working with influencers?
Absolutely not do. Oh, I should also say this ties in because it's the first thing that came to mind. Never, ever, ever pay for reviews. I hope that's obvious, but it hasn't been for some of the clients that I had worked with. So never pay for reviews, never pay to buy interest. You're not buying interest with sponsored content. You're buying their time. You're buying their priority. So because 18 to 20,000 games were released on Steam last year, as an example, you're buying your game's priority in their choice list to be at the top. You can specify the time. I get a video by this time. I get the first edit, by this time, and you have guaranteed content for your launch. That's what you're buying. They need to already be interested in your game or a good fit for your game. You're not buying, they're like, ugh, I don't really like that game, that kind of game, but I'll do it. That's not good. And absolutely don't sponsor reviews. But yeah, so it's a relationships industry. Influencer marketing is a relationship business. So all the do's have to mostly do with having good relationships with them. I feel like all the do's and don'ts are just kind of opposites of each other. So don't build relationships solely over emails. That's your last step. If you're only building relationships over emails, you're completely doing it wrong. It's just not going to be long lasting. You're going to get very, very low open rates and return rates. So do get involved with their day-to-day over social media, the content, meet them at events. Just get involved in them day-to-day, build real relationships. If an email is you're cold emailing them, your success rate is going to be a lot lower. Don't only reach out when you need something from them, like coverage. So build real relationships, start giving them things, helping them with things, connect them with people early. Don't be caught unprepared when meeting them face to face. So do have sign-up sheets, QR codes, have your pitch ready in a sentence, 2 at most. Same thing as if you're pitching a publisher, but just with a different angle. And have clear video showing off your game at shows. It's just such a pet peeve when I'm like doing my rounds at a trade show like a PAX or something, and it's just 1 or 2 laptops. There's no video that shows B-roll constant. You have to have B-roll showing constantly because you cannot rely on convention goers to actually play the game in an interesting way and not have it paused on a menu for 10 minutes at a time sometimes. Have actual, like, your selling point there. You're paying so much to be there. Make the most out of it. Don't sponsor influencers on your own if it's your first time. I can't reiterate that enough. You can try, but it's not going to be the best use of your money. So do hire someone who's experienced to manage the bulk of paid campaigns whenever possible. Let me think. Don't wait too long to think about influencers during development if they're important to your launch. Not every game is designed to, appeal to influencers. I'm not here to change your visions or anything like that, so that your general player experience is still going to be the most important to you. But if you think influencers are going to be important for the marketing plan of your launch, evaluate the importance early in your project planning, and then if it is, have it in mind throughout development, so that you have, you're not going to find yourself in a bind. Don't undermine their time or their voice, and respect their overflowing inboxes and their creativity. And also don't underestimate the significance of early access release when it comes to influencers. You really only get one shot with them for the most part, the bigger ones. And early access is your 1.0 with influencers.
And also, can we say, generally speaking, don't be an a-hole? Like, just
don't be an
to
a-hole.
people.
That's good advice.
Yeah. I think we went through most of the questions. Was there anything else that you feel people should absolutely know? Do you feel like you could take some questions from the crowd?
Yeah. Well, let me look at questions from the chat real quick. We're working for a publisher as a content creators manager. Do you think network is as crucial if you always work with influencer agencies that handle their reaching out? Yes. If you only, and it's fine if you do, I mean, that was me, right? If you only let a third party manage your relationships, you never own those relationships. So if they go under, if you fire them as an agency working for you, you're starting over. You don't have any relationships. So it is still important, but it depends on what your direction is. If you always plan to do that, that's not part of your in-house pipelines that you have as a publisher, then don't worry about it, because it is, you hired someone to do it full time for you. But if it is important to you to have those relationships yourselves and become self-sustaining, then it is important to have those relationships. I think it's always important to have a couple of bigger relationships for you, because then you as a publisher can incorporate them into more of your marketing beats in other ways. So I take a very holistic approach with influencer marketing. It's not just I work directly with content creators. I work with the merch team. I work with our social media. I work with community. I work with trailers, so that can we do like a trailer that's just accolades from press and influencers, and let's get permission from them. Let's get the right clips. Let's get them involved. Devolver, we had Devolver Directs, and we involved Skill Up, who's a really big YouTuber with games and in some of our stuff just for fun, little improv kind of fun. So I think it's important that no matter what, to have a relationship with at least your key influencers, the biggest supporters of your brand, so that you can involve them in other things, make them feel extra special. If we ever have any merch drops, we send it to our biggest fans, both big and small. You definitely don't want to, exclude the smaller creators, but it's important that you have them. They're fans of you, not of the agency that you hired, which was the thing with me when I was at the agency, is they followed me, not necessarily my clients. Do you feel like as a developer it is worth the Rio to implement Dreamer? Sorry, what is a Rio? to implement streamer appealing features like Twitch API to allow their audience to participate. Yes, absolutely. Not for every game. Oh, ROI. Yes, absolutely. But it is involved. So I do a lot of consultation just for Twitch integrations. I know everything there is about like what it is that appeals to an influencer. There can be negatives. It can actually hurt your game if it's not implemented well. And here's why. Streamers are very hungry for Twitch integrations. They know what it can do for their channel in terms of getting or audiences to stay. So you're not really looking at necessarily gaining more audience. You're looking at retention. So they're leaving less instead of getting more, which is still good, right? You want higher numbers. It bumps your category up. The streamers make more potential money out of it. It's a win-win. Cult of the Lamb was my biggest proving ground. My first major proving ground with that when I was at the publisher, and the results were very direct. So usually when streamers play new IPs, it's natural that their viewer ratio drops because it's a new IP. It's not what they usually play, or it's not a popular game already. And I'm talking about like new indie. And it's not unusual to see 50 to 80% viewership ratio for your game when you launch. That's part of why you sponsor these people, why money attracts them, because they're making up the difference that they lose playing at something new. Their audiences will, suffer a little bit for it. And that's what the difference in the money is. But with Cult of the Lamb, I think we saw 212% viewer ratio. So on average, every Twitch channel that played Cult of the Lamb during the time they streamed Cult of the Lamb, they saw over double their usual viewership because the integration was so effective. That's direct money saved. We didn't have to pay them to play the game. They wanted to play the game longer and longer, and it extended the tail. So that being said, it does have to be very meaningful. There are main ways of doing Twitch integrations these days. One is through just chat integration. It's the most common. It's easiest to implement when people type chat in the thing. The pros are that every viewer that has access to the chat, so including mobile, can participate. And the main con is that it does ruin the chat experience for both other viewers, because now especially if it's a spammy kind of an integration and everyone's typing it, the chat is dead. There's no way that the streamer can interact with it anymore, and other viewers, and it kind of turns them off that way. It's also limited in what you can do. And then there's the more advanced extensions, which are like web overlays. It's you're getting a web designer now to then put in hooks into your game. And it's a collaboration between the web designer and you. I have some recommendations for someone that's good to use for that. The person that we hired for the Cult of the Lamb integration, for instance, and it sits on top of the viewer, the stream video, and it doesn't interrupt anybody else's experience because it's by permission per user. So if you don't want to be involved, just say no, I don't want to see this, and you can skin it to look like they're actually in the game and in the stream yourself. And then the third one is through a third party like Crowd Control. And they can build things for you, or you can, I think, use their platform also. But it is extremely valuable. Not every game can benefit out of it. It has to make sense. You don't want to ham-fist it. But where it does make sense, it can be extremely, extremely valuable. But it does take time, yeah.
Cool. That is actually very interesting and something that I was looking to get into myself. So I'll definitely go and take a look at that. There's another question from the chat that I actually saw was submitted, and I completely forgot to add it to the list, so sorry. But it's the one about early access games. I'd love to hear some insights on how to include influencers with a game that will release in early access. Do you have any ideas on that?
It's your 1.0. Everything you would do for 1.0 launch, you would do for early access. Most of the big ones will not come back unless it's a certain type of game or it does really, really, really well, which maybe is tied with how many people are involved in your early access to begin with. So your smaller creators, likely they'll come back if they really like the game. If you show them a lot of attention, they're in your community because they like that idea. If they're involved with you in other ways, like the play testing, they're getting a special credit in the game. They're doing some other things that are involved in it. Then they might come back. But your bigger influencers are most likely not coming back unless it's a real big banger. And there's a reason because they're always thinking with their audiences, right? Like, why would I go back to a game that didn't perform well in early access or as a Kickstarter campaign or in Steam Next Fest or whatnot, right? So it's everything that you would do for 1.0 you're doing for early access. So giving them early access to the game, exclusive access, more access than you would give press. For instance, paying them is one way as well if you're brand new and you don't have those relationships at all. Sending them merch kits, which I don't usually recommend in general because they're so expensive to ship worldwide and you get very, very low return out of it. But there are positive effects. It does endear you to them, and you might get some social hits and you might get some press, pick up out of it. But being part of their discords, their communities, building really strong lists, doing in-game collabs, having a Twitch integration. I mean, it's the whole deal, right? The entire campaign. Whatever you do for 1.0, you want to do for your early access for sure.
There is another person typing, and we do have a few more minutes. So if you have any questions, this is the moment for you to ask. But other than that, while we wait, is there anything else that you think a first-time developer or somebody that is approaching influencer management for the first time absolutely has to know?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot, because I do a lot of smaller talks on all of these topics. Like I have an entire talk dedicated just to Twitch integrations, for instance. So when you do want to work with content creators and you want to do anything special for them, make sure that user acquisition is not your only target, your only goal. Right. That is one of the biggest mistakes that I see with both new and experienced publishers and influencer marketers is they're always focusing on getting more people, but they're not rewarding the OGs, your early adopters, your original adopters, the people who have supported you all along the way. You need to have both, and that's why it's very, very, very tricky when limited budgets to sponsor and otherwise do really cool things. So if you want to put someone in your game, for instance, and you're only going after big creators that have never touched your game before, and you're ignoring all the people who have supported your game the whole time, that's a fast way to alienate the base that you've already cultivated. So whenever you do, the easiest example to understand is sponsorship, right? You have a limited number of dollars, you have 50,000 or something. Yes, you do absolutely need to acquire new influencers into your plan and new adopters, new ambassadors, but throw some dollars, please, to the people who have supported you along the way so you don't alienate them and make them feel bad. You want to make sure that with limited dollars, you're sponsoring influencers that make them, it very clearly makes sense why you went with them, because otherwise you're going to get the effect of why not me? But for the most part, the sponsorship dollars went towards things that could scale really well. So we would sponsor charity initiatives that they could be involved in. We would do competitions like speedrun stuff. Or we would go with people who were made a lot of sense for it. As an example, the Space Pirate fake game they just made up. Someone who cosplays as a pirate all the time. They're known as a pirate persona. Makes sense, right? Obviously, you look at them and that's why he was sponsored, not me. Or very specialized kind of content. So we sponsored fake ads for a game that we launched. We sent them fake juice, and they had to do some weird fake ads that we could then use and repurpose on our channels. Or just make it obvious why them, not other people. There are 50 million currently gaming content creators in the world. You're not going to hit them all. You just need to know the right ones.
Wow, there goes my idea of starting to create content about games. Nope. I'm going to go with something a bit easier. No, jokes aside, I opened the floodgates to questions. We got 4, 5. I'll let you choose. Pick the one you like the most.
Hi there, Clara. I'm just because it said you said my name. You stroked my ego there, so I went with that. Thanks a lot for sharing your sites. Got lots of love for Devolver. They were the first one. Okay, that wasn't a question. Oh, there was a question. If you had to market a game where there are no obvious creator bubbles, you could tap into, where would you start? How would you go about it? Where there are no obvious creator bubbles, I need an example. I feel like there's a bubble for everything. Because of the fact, just purely that there's a variety content creators, they'll play anything. So I'm not. If you give me a little more detail, that would help. I'll answer. Ash says, what would some other ideas for content or creator community competitions other than speedruns? I mean, there's a very obvious community. Most of the creator community stuff is more leaned towards community marketing tactics. So for instance, the very used trick, and it still works, I still recommend it, is things that you plan on having in your game anyways, but you give them a poll to pick which one they want. Against the Storm did a really successful one of what the last species or race should be in the game, and I'm sure that they were prepared to do both. Cult of the Lamb, which of these animals should be involved. We're like they're all going in eventually. It might not be right away, but if you pick the lizard over the platypus will come in 3 months in some other content update down the line. But it makes them feel like they're involved, and so then where you just leverage that idea, because it's still community marketing technically, but you put it towards influencers and their communities. So if you can get your communities involved with this, like I will give you I don't know, we'll give you 3 extra keys to give away to your community in order for them to be involved, things like that. And then shout it out on social media, and whatever you do for your community marketing, just apply that. This is kind of a similar idea. Hypothetical battle royale bubble shooter. I mean, that's not, there's definitely creator bubble is part of both of your both the question and the example. And battle BRs are huge still. Any sort of multiplayer asymmetric or BR, like just free for all versus game, they all have obvious creator bubbles to tap into. How to start? I mean, you start with the big ones, right? And then you start drilling down which of those also play other games. If you're an indie and you're creating a new entry in a very established genre, for instance, asymmetric multiplayer, a Dead by Daylight, for instance, or a battle royale, you've got Fortnite and etc. in the world. You're targeting people who already play them, but also other things, because the ones who are super dedicated to those games will not deviate, except on their side channels, maybe if they have some. So you'll find maybe YouTubers that only upload COD content, but their Twitch channels are where they kind of experiment. They play other things, and they still have much smaller but decent viewing. Or they're just fans of it. You see on their social media they talk about other games, but they won't make content about it because it is a lot of effort to getting a lot less revenue for them. So you want to target those people who are willing to give it a chance and have followings on maybe their other platforms. That's one way of doing it. You can also just sponsor ad reads from them, where they'll play it on their own time. They won't make content out of it, but they play it. They love it. They will do some really quick, like a 90-second spot in the middle of one of their other videos. And when it's an ad, you can't skip it. Viewers can't skip that because it's content that they're making for you. So you can do ad spots that way. You can sponsor social media. You can have them in your playtests. And then maybe that entices them. They now feel like they're involved in it, and you might have to pay them for their time to play test and give you feedback, give them a special credit for it. Those are some of the ways that you can go about that. And I'm just going by the idea that you're making a game that's in a very well established genre. For educational language learning games, do you think it would be better to go for gamers or language learning influencers? That's actually a question I'm answering right now for one of my clients. Educational games is very, very tough with influencers. It's a tiny slice. You will find an influencer for anything you make. There's always someone, but is it going to be big enough that you focus on influencers as one of your main pillars of your marketing plan and your roadmap? Not necessarily. And it's not just educational games, point and click adventure games, puzzle platformers. I mean, there's just certain games that don't do super well on a broad level with influencers, or at least it's an uphill battle, and you'll see the 0.0001% that do really, really well, like the Slay the Princesses of the world, and what's that one that we did? I can't remember. Anyways, so when you're doing educational, depending on what it is. If it's for kids, you're targeting parents, you're targeting other sort of collaborations, where can we go elsewhere, because kids don't have any money. So you're not really targeting, you're getting them to create FOMO with them and then hit their parents, but the parents also need to be part of your marketing plan. For language learning, it's mostly not going to be influencers, except for I would do ad reads. You don't really want to sponsor a 2-hour stream of someone using your app. That's just not fun for anybody. or their audiences. So you're looking at them being spokespeople for you in various ways. So on your social media, in ad reads, maybe having them peppered throughout their stream, or their logos everywhere. Maybe you're doing like some sort of revenue share thing with them, referral programs. Maybe they talk about you with your community, and they run little events with them using your app, stuff like that. But you're not really sponsoring regular or doing regular content. It just doesn't fit most content these days, or what audiences are looking for when they go to gaming streams, if that makes sense.
Cool. Do you have a moment for a last question?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah? Okay. And let's see if there's anything that we missed from the chat. Otherwise, I'll just take a look at the list that didn't make the cut, but was still interesting. There was one actually that you started talking about, and it reminded me that it was one of the questions that we got, and now I'm completely blanking on it. But I know the chat will just probably share a last one. You have one last chance to ask a question, chat. Don't let me down, please.
I'll go through it. I definitely stopped reading. Merch thing is real exciting, seeing your brand and gaming physical good, but the return is really thin. We saw this with PUBG and Hearthstone all the time. Yes. If you are comfortable with sharing, I do want to speak about the merch thing. You can still make a good impact. If you look at what was it, Kepler? Who is it? I want to say Kepler. They did a pretty good job with some of their spends. You want to make sure you have a budget, the most you're willing to spend per kit that you send out, and then make it as cool as possible. It doesn't have to be high end, but neat. And that's, I mean, you'll either go high end, saying like branded PS5s to big influencers, or you're doing something that's cool. A really good example, in my opinion, is a game that I have forgotten by now. I forget what it's called, but some island game. There were just so many that came out at the same time, and they sent out ukuleles.
Oh yeah,
do you remember that game?
I kind of remember that, and the other one that I remember was there was a brewing game, and they sent out something.
It's Chia. Yeah, it was a Chia. So it was a really cool box that had like the pop-up 3D art. So well designed, well thought through. A ukulele, you think, well, oh my god, it's a full ass instrument, right? And it was a really shit ukulele, but it was so cool. It was branded, and a ukulele, cheap ukulele, is only like, I don't know. You can get in bulk. You can't get them as low as like 30 American. I did a little bit of a dive after. I was like, this was a cool idea. And then for Pacific Drive, they sent out like a kit, like a toolbox. Like it's super themed to the game, and like like an apron or something with their name embroidered, their channel name embroidered. That's definitely higher end because you're personalizing. You're not doing it at scale anymore as much. But even something as like a postcard that has all the devs, they all signed it, and you're sending it, and it's like a heartfelt message with some like custom art that they'll never see anywhere else. Like even that's kind of impactful, and you don't have to pay shipping fees; you're just paying mailing fees. You gotta think about things like shipping things from North America to Brazil is like $130 per package, and they doesn't even get there most of the time. It just gets lost. Sending to Australia, Japan, you gotta think again at scale. You want your influencer marketing plan to be global. You can't just think in your own region or in the native language of your game.
Is this the one, by the way?
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Was that the one you were talking about? The kit?
Yeah, Chia.
Oh, yeah. Okay, cool. Because I shared my screen. Hopefully, it didn't break anything. But you were talking about the box and everything. No, that's fine. It's mostly for the chat if they can see it. But yeah, it's a ukulele in a box, and it's simple, but it's beautiful at the same time.
I mean, there were other things. They had like those little flowers, the hibiscuses or whatever in there. That's again themed in the game. They had like some postcards in there as well. So you can do cute, but even if as cute as it is, the most that you're most likely going to get is less than 10% social post return. You send 100 kits out, you'll get 10 posts. That's really good. If you get 10, if you get 20, that's amazing. And it's not necessarily going to influence them to playing the game. If you are going to put in stuff that's apparel, don't send t-shirts. No one wants a t-shirt anymore. Do not do t-shirts. But if you are going to send apparel, try to do things that are visible from the shoulder up, because then they can maybe wear it on their channels when they're playing it. It can be visible. anything that where they can be involved themselves in showing it off instead of just like those don't do very well. It's just like, here's a picture of everything I got, a ukulele, show them pretending to play it. Think about these kinds of things. What can they actually do with what you're saying? Because it's very expensive to do something like this at scale.
Yeah. By the way, sorry, Ash. I just realized I probably broke the whole screen for you. But yeah. Anyway, we are 5 minutes after 7 where I am, 7 p.m. where I am. It's 9 a.m. where you are. Something
10.
like that. 10. Right. You have been amazing. I know that you have things to do. The day has just started for you. So I just wanted to thank you for being here, for joining us. I know that the chat probably really enjoyed this. Chat, if you haven't already, go and follow Clara. Don't forget to check out the rest of the stuff that we do on Discord. We did mention that we are working on influencer discovery stuff. But we are also doing a lot of free tools for marketing. If you do want to go and, for some reason, I don't know why you want to do that, but if you do want to go and follow me on Blue Sky, I also exist there. Although I don't really use it. You can find me here. And Clara, I don't know if people want to come and ask you for questions, can they reach out to you in any way?
I am available through LinkedIn and email from my site. I am extremely busy currently, so if I don't get back to you, it's because of that, not because I don't like you in any way, shape, or form. But yeah, I am a freelancer now, as I mentioned before, so I'm in that phase where I might have taken on too much work. Because I'm in a very, very privileged and very lucky position. I'm very, very grateful. But I will be prioritizing my clients for a little while. But if you're looking for a consultation, I'm totally happy to do that. My last 2.5 weeks has been nothing but GDC pitch reviews and recommendations. But I'm starting a couple of retainers upcoming soon.
Well, thank you for joining us anyway. And thanks everybody for being here. Just one thing, we will have another one of these in about a month, but I can't tell you much about it. But I will share more details about it in the next few days, so keep an eye on the Discord. And as usual, if there's anything that you need help with or you want to ask, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Dan, you can reach out to Ash here on Discord. And we have quite a few people joining, so I know if you ask a question, you probably get an answer. Cool. Thank you again for joining us, and I'll see you next time. Bye.